I'd like to welcome you to the November Manufacturing Advantage webinar. Today we'll be hearing from Peg Dorn from WMEP and Ted Theyerl from the MOC as they discuss supplier scouting. Participant mics will be muted for the presentation, but there will be an opportunity to ask questions. Please feel free to type any questions you may have in the chat as well. With that, we'll hand it over to Peg and Ted here.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending. So today we're going to talk about a service called Supplier Scouting. It's tuning up your supply chain because there may be disruptions, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a strike at the ports, or you're just in need of a certain item that you can't find a supplier for, or you're wanting to help somebody that has a need. So, with that, I'm gonna just kind of move on to talk about who's talking today. And we have a Wisconsin MEP network. So in Wisconsin, we're fortunate to have what we call manufacturing outreach, well, manufacturing extension centers. And one is located in, I would say, headquartered in Madison, the Wisconsin Manufacturing Extension Partnership, WMEP. They pretty much cover the southern, eastern, and parts of the north on the east side to connect with. And then I'm a staff member at the Manufacturing Outreach Center. We cover western and a lot of northern Wisconsin. So I would say like from all the way down to La Crosse, but La Crosse, Wausau, Minelander, then it kind of cuts over to Superior and over to Hudson. And we're located in Menominee, Wisconsin at UW-Stout. So what the MEP network is, every state has an MEP center. Some have multiple centers, and it's really a network of consultants or assistants to help manufacturing compete in the global market. And today, fortunately, we have Peg Dorn from WMEP, and I'll let you introduce yourself, Peg.
Okay, thank you, Ted. As Ted said, I am with the WMEP, the Wisconsin Manufacturing Extension Partnership. We have offices in Madison. We have an office in Milwaukee as well. And we are kind of located throughout the south and east part of the state. And we're here today to talk about supplier scouting. Ted and I are the scouts for the MEP network. I have been with WMEP for 11 years now, and I work mostly with certifications. So if you need to become ISO certified or have a food safety need or something like that, that's typically where I step in. I've been in food safety and certification most of my career. And I am going to throw it back over to Ted, and he can give you some of his background.
Thank you, Peg. My name is Ted Theyerl, and I'm happy that I get to work with Peg on this. Yeah, I've been at UW-Stout for over 29 years because I love it, and I love working with manufacturers. And part of the, we have offices in from Shell Lake over to Wausau, based in Menominee at UW-Stout, and I'm in Eau Claire. So we try to cover that part of the state. My main background is continuous improvement and lean manufacturing. But this whole supplier scouting intrigued me a lot as far as trying to connect manufacturers, because every time we can connect manufacturers with an opportunity, or if they have an opportunity to find something, um, it's oh, that's a great part of my job. So yeah. So, and I also want to say at any point here when we go forward, if you want to chime in, you can raise your hand. If you look at the top, there's a raise your hand, and we'll try to figure that out and go with that. So thank you for being here. So what is supplier scouting? And you can read the slides here, but it's really, there's been disruptions. It really started during the pandemic when, yeah, we couldn't find everything. We had shortages of toilet paper and all that other stuff. But manufacturers had shortages of materials and supplies that they couldn't get. And so the Manufacturing Extension Network said, hey, here's a need. And it yeah, might not have another pandemic, but we could have a disruption. And so it's trying to connect the, like I said, consumer, logistics, distribution, manufacturer, figuring out, you know, I guess second choices to, or third or fourth to supplies that are critical to you. And from my perspective too, I was during the pandemic, Toyota, I was surprised because they're lean. They don't like inventory, right? But a lot of their critical supplies, control boards, things like that, they had kept up enough in case there was something like that. So, you know, it's kind of a strategic look at, you know, where you get things that are very critical to you. The other thing is, you know, it takes a long time to get things from overseas. So we're trying to bring things home, back to the US. And so we can rely on our neighbors for things that we you know, really need as a manufacturer. So I'm going to ask Peg to kind of talk about this.
Okay. These are some of the issues that you might be experiencing when you're reaching out to manufacturers. Reaching out too late. This is kind of being reactive instead of proactive. And we typically want to have a vendor and a backup. And if something goes wrong, you've got a backup there. Common problems: lack of well-developed websites. Your vendors all have websites. They tell you what they provide, but not all of them are great. They may not list everything that they do. They may not have the certifications out there. I know one of the things that I like with websites is if I need someone's certification, I don't have to call them. I don't have to email them. I go right to their website, download it, and I'm good to go. But not all manufacturers are able to do that. And it can be difficult if the website isn't showing exactly what they're doing to identify who can provide what. There's another common problem. You may not get a response from your vendor, or you get a slow response. Or you may identify or working with new sources. You may have a hard time sourcing new suppliers. And that's really what this is all about, is this the supplier scouting program is here to help you find new suppliers and new sources. Another common problem is there's really no database out there for all the manufacturers and their suppliers. I've worked a lot with ThomasNet. You're probably thinking of that one. It's good, but it's not perfect, and not everyone is out there. So what we're trying to do with supplier scouting is take each of these issues and come up with a solution. We are working on a database. Every state is working on a database of suppliers. We communicate through that database, and we look throughout the state for a supplier. So we're not just confined to Wisconsin. We can chase down those suppliers if you don't have time, if they're being unresponsive. We in the MEP can chase them down for you. And we can help identify who those new vendors are and what they do. And the goal here is to go from a reactive situation where, oh my God, I need supplies and I don't have a supplier, to a proactive, where if you have a supplier that can't provide you product, you've got an easy solution. You just flip the switch and you go to a new one. They're all ready. So those are some of the common problems, and that is what supplier scouting is trying to do to help alleviate those problems. So I'm going to throw it back to Ted.
Hey, thank you, Peg. Yeah, it's great. So Peg and I, we go on a federal actually site to connect with all the centers in the country in every state, and we have to review requests every week or every day and see if we have people that we know or other centers that we know that could supply that. The other thing is we can post requests. We can, if you, I'm like, can't find something, need something, or our supplier, is no longer, we can both post that to the national database. And there's a process we'll talk about a little bit later about how that works. So it's trying to eliminate supply chain issue problems.
Okay. A big part of this is Build America, Buy America, called BABA. And this is a federal program which requires manufacturers or builders who are working on a project in the US and getting money from the federal government to aid them in that project, they need to use American sourced materials. That's not always easy. Sometimes those materials aren't available within the US and they have to go overseas. And that's where we come in. If they have to go overseas, they have to get a waiver from the government. And in order to get that waiver, the request really needs to come to us, the MEP network, and we're going to look throughout the US and Puerto Rico for a vendor for them. And they won't get their waiver unless we can't find someone. It's kind of a long process, but it's really designed to bring that manufacturing, like Ted said, back home. We don't want to be dependent on overseas manufacturing, and this program is designed to bring some of that manufacturing back to the US. So BABA is really in the background. As a manufacturer, you really don't have to worry about it because we're managing it for you. And with that, I'll throw it back to Ted.
Hey, well, thanks. Thanks, Peg. Nice to know. So we've talked about supplier scouting and what we do a little bit already, but this kind of outlines it in a nutshell how it works. If you look at step 1 on the circle, supply chain need identified. So it's either a request or it's going to be something I can provide. But in this case, it's going to be a request. I need something. I need somebody that can provide me. Either, could be a backup too, supplier. So step 1 is connecting with either Peg or I to get that process started. And we get contact information later, and you can look us up too. But we have to input, exactly what you're kind of looking for, specs, documents, and where you are, contact information, all that. And then NIST MEP, which I don't know, we haven't talked about NIST, but it's National Institute of Standards and Technology, which sponsors the Manufacturing Extensionship Program. And they distribute that. It's through a website that Peg and I work with, to all the supplier scouts in the whole nation and Puerto Rico, like you said, and Hawaii and Alaska, because I see a lot from Alaska too. They distribute it to everybody, all of the network, and then they aggregate results. So they summarize those results, and then they prepare a report that goes to the requester about all potential suppliers that have shown interest. And what Peg and I do a lot of times, we get all these requests. So we do research on companies, and we have resources and websites and everything, and we try to find a match. And so that goes into the match that gets in the report. And contact information, it's not up to us to exactly make that connection, but if anybody requests anything, they're going to get information on potential suppliers, and then they get to contact them. But it's kind of filtered in a way that we do research and try to find potential suppliers, and the whole system too. If you can supply something, we're trying to find you. So there's not a great way to kind of go about, other than maybe our background knowledge, our staff that we work with, and the research that we do in supplier scouting to kind of find matches. And I don't know, I've been talking a long time. Has anybody got a question about this? Anyone out there? All right. So we've talked about this. Each state has an MEP, and each MEP has a scout. We research and share opportunities within our states. They're compiled in a database. If you request something, you get a report back from MEP. If there is a match, the vendor and the requester are introduced. And, between Peg and I, if we know about that, we can certainly introduce you and, see if there's something somebody can do for you. And, it was interesting this past week too. A colleague of mine, Kevin, and I think he's on here, he brought a client over from to Chippewa Falls, a client that I worked with for 15 years. And one was a plastic, I guess, supplier, machiner. They do machining of plastic. And they met with a company that makes fire truck pumps that has been around for over a century. And you know what? It was kind of magical. Even though they can't maybe help each other with their customers, they can learn from each other. So even just doing the scouting and seeing connections we can make, that's a part of what I would say the Wisconsin MEP network is about, whether it's WMEP or the Stout MOC. We're trying to make connections. And if it's not a supply, it's maybe a process related thing. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and the beauty of this is that we have representatives throughout the country. So we really are a network that is there for you, and you can tap that network. If we don't have the manufacturing ability in Wisconsin, I can call the guy in California, I can call the guy in North Dakota, Iowa, and we can connect them. So it's really an extension of us that we have this whole network of people out there that we can call. And as we're doing this, we're building this database, which I think is the best part of it, is that we're gathering all this information of all these suppliers and what they can supply. So that's kind of the beauty of it.
Oh, great point, Peg. Thank you. Yeah, and
this is a
go ahead.
This is a picture of the representatives. And each state is in here, and Puerto Rico. I am in the back, hiding behind someone, I think, so you probably won't be able to see me. This came from a meeting we had in South Carolina, I want to say a few months ago, where we all got together. We discussed how things were going and how we could improve things. So this just kind of puts a face to it that we really are out there and we really do exist. I see a hand up.
Hey, Bob.
Hi, this is Bob. Great information here. Thank you so much for taking the time out today to explain it to us. If we put in a request through this system, about how long will it take for us to, should we expect a response?
Peg, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I can take that one. It usually takes a couple weeks for it to get out there and for the other suppliers to do the research. There is a minimum of 30 days, so you're going to hear something within 30 days. The requests that I've made typically are 2 to 3 weeks when I start getting information back, and I'm able to put some of that information together and make that match. So if there's a match out there, you should have one within 30 days.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's I know it, a lot of times too, it's we're trying to, this MEP is developing the system to, like, when we get notified, and it used to be closing dates and now it's opening dates. And like Peg said, it's usually about 30 days. And, a lot of times when I'm looking at opportunities, some will put them out there for like 3 months, so it's not like I need something back right away, but we're trying to get back. I mean, from what I've seen, we're trying to get back pretty quickly. So, hey, good question, Bob. Thank you.
Okay, this is a success story. This came from Vermont. There's called the Outdoor Industry Association. This was a group of very small vendors making things like tents and knives and things that outdoor enthusiasts typically need. And they weren't having a whole lot of success because they were so small, or they are so small. They didn't have a lot of buying power, and they were having a hard time sourcing things. So a person at the Vermont MEP, got all these vendors together and started helping them. He kind of worked as a conduit for them. These requests came into him, and he's starting to notice, hey, I've got 2 companies that need the exact same thing. Why don't we combine this and get a little bit more buying power? And with that, these very small manufacturers who don't have a lot of time to source things, they don't have a lot of revenue. They come together, and working with the MEP, they had some success finding vendors, had a little bit more buying power because they could buy in bigger quantities. And they really did create this conduit or at the MEP for them to work together. And it's a success story for very small manufacturers, which is kind of something that I like to concentrate on. I like to work with very small folks who might only have one or two people in the business, and they just don't have the time to research vendors, and they don't have the money. And that's where this one focused, was not a lot of time, not a lot of money, work together, get some more more of that buying power. And this one actually was good. It was a nice success story. And I'll throw it back to Ted.
Yeah, well, thank you, Peg. And and it's sometimes connecting industries that don't think they even know about. We have a lot of horseradish in Eau Claire, and I had somebody looking for small packets of some kind of food product, and it's like, oh, I've been there, and I know they make small packets, not just horseradish, soy sauce and mustard and all kinds of stuff. That was a connection. Sometimes it's could be machining and totally different industry. So yeah, I mean, or I need a pump, and I'm like, oh, I know a fire truck pump manufacturer, and I asked them, what about this? And they're like, oh yeah, we could do that. So so some of it is our research, our knowledge that of our local Wisconsin base, but again, like Peg said, we reach out nationally and kind of find out who's doing what and when, and it's all posted on there on the database that we use. And there's a lot of, I can call any center right now in the whole country, and they'll be receptive to if we have a request. So yeah, that's what I would say. All right, here's the deal. And I know my last name is really kind of hard to pronounce and spell. It's Theyerl. But I've been at Stout for a long time, so you can find me on the directory. Peg's address is pretty easy too, and I would say email us, and if we want to talk, we can do that too. Just want to make sure it's accessible, this whole system, just making you aware of that it's out there. And we work on this every week too. It's not my full-time job. I work with other companies and do other things too, but this is a big part of what Peg and I are focusing on, and it's a great opportunity. So feel free to reach out and contact us anytime. Thank you all for being on here, but we want to make sure nobody has any questions, or if you do, you can email us, but if you have any right now, that'd be great too.
Just want to thank everyone for being here. You can check out WMEP at our website. There's a lot of information out there for what we do. MOC also has a very good website. You can check out what they do. So thanks for being here, and use us. We're here to help.